call this meeting to order Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. Will you stand with me with the American leaders in prayer and pledge?
Thank you. Please bow with me. Lord, thank you once again for just a wonderful city of Sebring, the place that we live and thrive. We thank you for the citizens that we have. We thank you for the city staff that keeps the city running. We have been honored with your presence and the rising of your Son coming up through the Easter season. We look forward to the future of having a great place to live. We ask that you watch over everyone in our city, keep our first responders safe. We ask that you, as our northern citizens head their way back home, is to guide them safely up the road. We ask that all we do in your name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Shoup,
here.
Bishop,
Here.
Havery,
Here.
Mendel,
Here.
Stewart,
Here.
Carlisle.
Here. Okay, if there's anyone in the audience that'd like to come up and speak to us, there's some forms right here on the table. Fill them out and give them to Clerk Haley, and we will bring you up at the appropriate time. Thank you. Mayor.
Just a couple things that happened. Of course, Easter came, and we had a nice Southside Baptist put on a great little event, prayer service on the Circle in the morning, and then we had several churches that were out at the racetrack had kind of an open church that was really very well attended. I think they had estimated 2,400 people that came to that mass, and it was a pretty cool event to see everybody, different churches. I think Grace Bible was one. They had La Roca, which is the Spanish church, and Wings of Faith. So it was really a good coming together of everybody, and I think that's pretty much what our community is coming together. So it was really kind of neat. Also had the big soda festival. For those of you that went, it was a tremendous turnout. Thanks to the chamber, to Neil and Paige. Pretty much 3 people in the chamber put that on and drive it forward, but they did a good job. Had a lot of people coming to town. I hadn't heard yet what the attendance records were, but it was pretty astounding. And if you like your French fries in the roadway, there's still some oil left from the French fry guy who had a little mishap, or intentional mishap. But thanks to Steve and his crew for getting everything up they can or could, but it was just a little bit of mess. But other than that, and a couple issues that we have, I think, with downtown businesses that are talk to Scott and some of the people that plan those events, figure out how we can enhance their businesses too. But all in all, I think it was just they did a really good job, and it was good to see all those people. So I do have a couple proclamations, all relating to tourism and International Museum Day, and if Casey Hart is here to join me. I'm going to read the proclamation. I'm coming down by here. But first, you need to come up here once. This is the Rodeo King of Highlands County, Yale. How many belts did you win last weekend? Was it last weekend? Sunday? 4 belts, buckles. I heard you got a saddle too? Wow. This is an awesome guy coming up, and he's what, you're 37 years old? 9 years old, so give him a big hand. Good job, Yale. Ooh, in the paper, you're going to be a rock star, aren't you? So, good deal. Congratulations. Good job.
Right.
That's
Spell his name right.
All right. There you go. All right, I've got a couple proclamations. The first one is for National Travel and Tourism Week. Casey Hart, for those of you who don't know, she heads up our TDC and drives a lot of our tourism that's bringing people from out of town at some big events that are big events coming up this summer. Does a good job, so we really appreciate what she does. So we've got a couple proclamations here. The first one, well, Whereas the first full week of May is recognized as National Travel and Tourism Week to promote the contributions of travel and tourism to our nation's economic prosperity and image around the world and the well-being of Americans. And whereas travel to and within the United States produces significant economic benefits, generates $2.1 trillion in economic output, and supports 15 million jobs. And whereas travel and tourism are vital components of Highlands County's diverse economy, a cornerstone of our vibrant quality of life and catalyst for entrepreneurship, cultural enrichment, historic preservation, community revitalization, and economic growth. And whereas in recent years, visitor spending in Highlands County has generated $272.5 million per year, had a $247 million annual economic impact to the county, and provided 3,866 jobs, and saved each Highlands County household $169 per year. That's pretty awesome. And whereas the Highlands County Tourist Development Council, TDC, was established to stimulate the tourism industry in Highlands County, support the development of local tourism marketing programs, and increase the prosperity and welfare of the people of Highlands County. And whereas in an effort to market Highlands County as a premier travel destination, the Highlands County Tourist Development Council works tirelessly in partnership with localities, businesses, and nonprofit institutions to extend the appeal and reach of Highlands County tourism advertising and promotions. And whereas travel and tourism professionals are devoted ambassadors for Highlands County, whose commitment to economic opportunity, community development, hospitality, and progress exemplify the highest ideals and best traditions of Highlands County. Now therefore be it resolved by the virtue of the authority vested in me as a mayor of the city of Sebring, do hereby proclaim May 7th through May 13th, 2023 as National Travel and Tourism Week, and calls this observance to the attention of all our citizens. So thank you. Number 2 is the museums, so we only have 6 more to go. So. Whereas museums throughout Highlands County, Florida, the United States of America, and the world provide unique educational and cultural opportunities that significantly enhance our quality of life. And whereas museums play a vital role in preserving Highlands County's rich history, telling stories about our past while providing insight into our future by maintaining and nurturing historical links. And whereas Highlands County Museums will celebrate International Museum Day on May 18, 2023 in numerous ways, including offering special tours and hosting guest speakers. And whereas with the theme Museums, Sustainability, and Well-Being, the 2023 observance of the National Museum Day will serve as a reminder that museums have the power to achieve sustainability in various ways, including fostering inclusivity, tackling social isolation, and improving mental health. And whereas we encourage all Highlands County residents to recognize the importance of museums to our communities and to work together to preserve these valuable institutions for enjoyment and benefit today and in the future. Now therefore be it resolved that by the virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Sebring, do hereby proclaim May 18, 2023 as International Museum Day. So
Thank
thank
you.
you, Casey,
Thank
for all
you
you
so
do.
much.
We appreciate it.
Thank
You want
you.
to talk about your event?
If it's okay.
You got it.
Okay.
You have the
All right.
floor. so.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. I decided to come a little early. I know those events aren't until May because we have been working on something. I know some of you came to our meeting last year. We had some discussion about a multi-purpose facility. You've heard everything from we need more pickleball courts here to we did a survey, and it's everything from we need a splash park to bowling alley. We need something for kids to do. All the comments are all over the board. So what we did is we got a grant to do a study for a multi-purpose facility of some sort to find out what we actually do need in Highlands County. And what we're trying to do, what the goal is to marry what the residents need and want with what tourism will also drive tourism here. Because we don't want to build a facility that's going to be a drain on the residents' pocketbook. So if tourism can pay for it and spend their time in it on the weekends and the residents can enjoy it during the week, that's really the ideal situation. So we have 2 consulting groups. The Central Florida Regional Planning Council is handling the recreational, the resident side, and a group out of Phoenix called the Huddle Up Group is handling the tourism component. They will both be at a special community meeting next Wednesday, April 26th at 3 o'clock. That will be at the County Commission Chambers. The public is invited to hear what they have to say and also provide feedback. And then I handed out in your places on May 17th, we are having our annual tourism luncheon. This year we will have the final results of this study for the facility and recommendations to move forward. and we will also be distributing our tourism awards. We do 8 tourism awards each year to recognize people who have demonstrated exemplary service within the tourism industry here in Highlands County, and that's everyone from an attraction to a restaurant, someone who's a humanitarian, because we know a lot of the people, whether it's a server at a restaurant or someone at the front desk of a hotel, they're the face. When tourists come here, that's who they predominantly interact with. So we wanted to appreciate those people who put on a good face for Highlands County. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Could you repeat the meeting?
So next week, it's going to be April 26th, that's a Wednesday, at 3 o'clock at the County Commission Chambers, right at the Government Center.
And it's for,
It's to talk about, I think it's called the Tourism and Recreation Facility Community Meeting.
thank you.
Mhm. That's all I have.
That's it. How about the water sports coming?
Oh, sure, I can talk about that too. So we have, are these for me?
Those are.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So we do, one of the things when COVID hit, I think I've talked to a lot of people about this. When COVID hit, we saw people traveling for leisure dip down. So we went really hard on sports because we know even if if at the time you weren't going to take your leisure trip, if your kid played baseball or if you were a triathlete, you were still going to travel for those events. So we've had a lot of success within the sports tourism world. So starting May, the first weekend in May, we've got Pro Watercross. It's going to be at Veterans Beach. For those of you who don't know, that's jet ski racing. And it's not just racing, but they also have a freestyle event where they do flips and all kinds of really cool things. So that's fun to watch, and I think it's been really embraced by our community that likes racing anyway. We also have, that weekend, we have the Florida Amateur Wrestling Association will be at Allen J. Arena. They're doing their state championships here. And then we have a couple of lacrosse events coming in May. One of them is USA Lacrosse, which is like nationally sanctioned. I mean, they're they oversee the Olympic lacrosse team. So that's really big for us. Not only are they doing their actual play at the sports complex, but they're doing a Hall of Fame banquet as well at the Civic Center. So that's pretty exciting for us as well. And I'm trying to think, we also have, I'm trying to go through my list. We have a cornhole tournament Father's Day weekend the wrestling event is going to be at the college. Cornhole is going to be at Allen J. Arena Father's Day weekend. And then we have motorized surfboard racing coming Labor Day weekend. I'm probably missing something, but that's all I can think of off the top of my head. So,
Good. Thank you, Casey.
yes, sir.
Do you have a listing that we can go online and find this? Because you spit out a whole bunch of stuff.
We do. So our website is visitsebring.com. And if you go to the events section, we have a whole calendar so you can see everything. Because we also feature things like fishing tournaments and other things. Those are just the events that we are responsible for bringing in. But we do try to capture all the events that are happening that may be of interest to tourists. Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Casey. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for the update. And congratulations, Yale.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Okay, councilmen's concerns, comments, and liaison reports. We'll start with Ms. Mendel.
Good evening. In my report, really with the Heritage Association had put on a big event. I know that's a county event out at Edna Pierce Lockett, but it was just wonderful, very well attended. The Heritage Association has tried very hard to incorporate Sebring Historical Society, Avon Park Historical Society, and Lake Placid Historical Society. So that's been very wonderful that we've had interaction. And in the purpose or mission statement for the CRA, they have in there to promote and to help with our history of Sebring and our historical buildings. So we would like to see, I think that would be a good thing for us to work on, a better association with our Sebring Historical Society. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Harrison?
It's busy 2 weeks, meeting with a lot of different departments. So I just want to thank all the department heads. I've talked a lot with the fire department. Chief Carl, police department answered a lot of questions I had. I could go down the list. Had a long meeting with Dave and Christy, several meetings. So there's somebody said it was like drinking through a fire hose. I think it's like a fire hydrant. But now I know that we have about 800 fire hydrants and how they're maintained. So this has been a very exciting time. Looking forward to learning a lot more and helping. Just in summary, no questions that I've had are left unanswered. Every department I've talked to, every time I picked up the phone, somebody was willing and able to answer all the questions I had, to sit down. So just thank you for your time. If anybody has questions, I would just encourage you to talk to departments in the city directly. Everybody that you guys are a huge team. You guys work together. Didn't really think that coming from private sector, looking at the government. But you guys are a big team, and if I ever get out of private sector, government sounds pretty good, just with the way that the team that the city has. So thank you all for your time and helping me get acclimated to the position.
You got a lot more to learn, but.
Oh, I know.
Mr. Bishop.
No report, sir.
Mr. Stewart.
The only thing I want to mention is had a productive meeting with the Blackman Group, who are the purchasers of Harder Hall, this week. And despite looks, they are actively working. They're getting the pre-construction stuff done. It's not going to sit there as a derelict. I know we get antsy when we haven't seen stuff happen, but they're working behind the scenes. That's all.
Thank you. And I have a question, I guess, as I had a citizen ask me about, I never thought about this, and maybe some people don't, handicap for playgrounds. Do we have any playgrounds for handicapped children, or is there, at our playgrounds, is there a place for handicapped children? And my answer to them was, unfortunately, fortunately, I've never had handicapped children, and it's something that probably the typical person don't think about. So,
I don't think we have a playground that's designated as ADA compliant, like the playground I think they have in Lake Placid. But from an access perspective, we put mulch in our playgrounds. We used to have sand to help make them ADA accessible. I probably can't speak any greater than that because I don't know that any of the equipment that's been placed in the parks is, set up for ADA access, if you will.
okay, well, they were asking if there was a way that we could possibly have at least one park for that. So, Steve, that's a question for you too, but we can all discuss that later. As normal, the mayor steals my thunder. I went to the Circle for the sunrise service, and as usual, it was very good, and I appreciate the church doing it. The pastor always does a great job. The people that help him do a great job, and I just want to commend them for what they do for our city and downtown. And I didn't make it to the other one, but like the mayor said, I heard it was a wonderful event as well. So thank you for that. Okay. No more councilman's reports or questions. We'll move on to the consent agenda. And I'll accept a motion for the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second that.
Any questions about the consent agenda from council, from audience? Okay. Kathy?
Bishop,
Yes.
Hayre,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes, there is no old business. New business, 10A is a resolution number 2023-07, establishing a public participation policy. And I will turn this over to Mr. Swain.
As we discussed at the last council meeting, the council can adopt a policy for the regulation of its business meetings. And the resolution that you have in front of you addresses that. The thrust of it is that the council president is charged with running the business meeting of the city council meeting, and that the president may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's presentation if the presentation becomes too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant to city business, and that the council president may request an individual that does not observe reasonable decorum to leave the city council meeting. But there was we're including in the policy the business from audience procedure, where members of the public can raise matters to council's consideration that are not otherwise on the agenda, that someone from a group that wishes to address council that doesn't feel comfortable maybe getting up and speaking themselves can designate a representative to speak on their behalf, or one person speak on behalf of a group that all feel the same way. And that one thing that needs to be changed from the version that you're looking at is this, what you're looking at calls for speakers to designate their name and their address for the record. You can require that, or you could require a softer level of asking the resident to advise whether they are, or excuse me, the speaker, whether they are a resident or not a resident of the city of Sebring. Depending on the matter in front of council, that may add weight to the speaker's comments, whether it really affects them or does not. There obviously are times when city matters do affect non-residents, but by and large, they affect residents more than non-residents. So this kind of policy is only capable of, especially curtailing discussion. That is really only possible because this is a business meeting, and the running of a business meeting has a strong public policy in the state of Florida. The city could not pass a similar rule allowing for council president to stop discussion or limit discussion in the parking lot or in Circle Park. It is simply because this is the running of a business meeting that allows for policies such as this to be put into place. The courts have upheld this at the federal trial court level and at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the appellate region for the southeastern portion of the United States. So it has been challenged and upheld as permissible. Council doesn't have to adopt this if you don't want to, and it is in the form of a resolution that council can change it as you go forward and find out that you would like to change it for differing reasons. It needs to be implemented evenly and not, aligned with one view or another. But the focus is on running an efficient business meeting and handling the matters of the city rather than, if you will, a debate gathering of people that wish to just discuss policy in general. So that's the sum of what the public participation policy is and issues related to it.
You want to read the resolution?
We don't need to read it.
Okay. Okay, is there any discussion up here in council? Yes, ma'am.
I have a discussion on, I'm very concerned about this. I look on it as limiting the freedom of speech and our First Amendment rights. I think we already have in place, we've been able to take care of any problems. The two gentlemen that spoke last at our last meeting, I was kind of alarmed that they were, I felt like, treated rudely, and they were not allowed, the second one, to continue to speak because what they were saying was in disagreement with a lot of what was thought of up here. My view is each and every person in our city can come and speak their mind. They only have 3 minutes, and as long as they're orderly and do it in the prescribed way, sign up and as they're called and go for the 3 minutes, they should be able to speak. And I did consult with my Liberty Counsel lawyer about it, and they specialize in First Amendment rights, and they felt like this was not a good idea, and they would be interested in hearing more about it. But I believe that our citizens should be able to say what they want. We had instances of meetings in the past where people came, many people came and spoke against me. I made a little list of some of the things: racist, bigot, fascist, anti-gay, anti-business, a hater. I should be removed, I should be sued, and I just let them speak. They have a right to speak. I don't agree with what they said, and everybody up here can respond to anybody that speaks. They can say, no, that's not so, or whatever. But I am absolutely against any move to shut down, especially opposing views. I think a person should have a right to get up here and say the same thing every week. I mean, every city council meeting. Just, it's only 3 minutes, let them speak. And so that's my view, and I would not think this is a good idea.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I don't think that we're trying to shut down opposing views. I think we're trying to regulate to relevant views. That's how I view this, and there are sometimes people that come and speak and they're talking about things that aren't actually relevant to our business, the city's business, or the business at hand.
I never heard that.
Well, okay. I have frequently.
To me, what you just read, people said to you, is not relevant to our city business. They're running you down, and what we're trying to do is stop people from coming up here and just belittling other people. It's got nothing to do with our city business. We want them to talk to us about city business, but we don't need to hear about them calling people liars or calling you what you were called. That's not what we're here for. We're here to run the city, not listen to people run other people down.
And I would have appreciated that opinion back in those meetings.
Well,
That's why we're trying to do
That's why
this.
we're trying to do this now.
You know, the thing is, I say they have a right to speak and express their opinion for their 3 minutes. And then, you know, if you don't agree with it, you can speak up afterwards, but that's just, I just don't, what alarmed me was the 2 gentlemen that spoke last time. The second one spoke to me a few days after the meeting and said he was quiet and calm. I don't really know him. Dale Gillis, he got up there and he couldn't even get his question out. He was interrupting. He was interrupted, and the mayor said, well, I know where you're going with this, but you know, he has a right to say what he thinks, whether we agree with it or not. That's my opinion.
But it still wasn't relative to what our business was about. He was talking about somebody.
Well, somebody is, we're all public officials, and that's part of the process.
Well, I agree, but if we have an issue with somebody, we should go to them, not to city council.
Well, I disagree with that because I have an issue and I've gone to CRA and I can't get them to publicly answer my questions. I have said that up here before.
Okay. Well, we're not here to argue. Is anyone from the audience want to speak on this? Yes, sir.
This is brief. I've seen a video of Cynthia Hopkins at her last meeting with either CRA or City Council. She said on public record that the Communist government of China was more fair to do business with than the Sebring, CRA, or City Council. There is a great public awareness today of the denial of right of free speech. Putin was in the paper today. Both Russia and China are criticized by the world for denial of free speech. Sebring would be wise not to join them. National media would have a field day with what is being said right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christopher Tuffley, 729 Poinciana Avenue, Sebring. I'd like to take a slightly different look at this. Yes, it's true that we do, that actually you gentlemen and lady do business here, but it's not, strictly speaking, a business meeting, because a large part of what is being discussed is what our policies will be. And I think it's essential for citizens to be able to input into that. It's true that there are individuals who may not do their homework and speak before you in a way that you might say waste time, or they speak to you when they should speak to other people instead. But if we are going to remain that wonderful town, we really have to remain inclusive, and we really have to keep open minds to what citizens have to say. And echoing Mrs. Mandel, it's only 3 minutes. And if you're getting into politics at whatever level, you have to realize that not everybody is going to agree with you every time. And I think you have to make allowances for that. So I would ask you not to vote for this resolution. Certainly to look at the issue, but not restricts freedom of speech. And when you do bring up the resolution, to read the resolution and not say it doesn't have to be read. Thank you.
It is not legally required to read a resolution before adopting it. That's what I meant to say.
Okay. Anyone else?
Tom Mendel, Sebring resident. The City Council is proposing a public policy to limit public discussion in City Council meetings. After the mayor last week, or April 4th, said he was tired of speakers discussing previous issues, having incorrect facts, and talking negatively about the CRA chairman when he wasn't present. Mr. Dean was providing 2 new council members information about the CRA project, that was discussed previously at City Council meetings. It was overstated that he, meeting after meeting, had discussed that. He had discussed it a few meetings, but not meeting after meeting. Even though Mr. Dean could have used some different language, his demeanor was fine. He didn't use foul language, and he had a normal tone of voice. The mayor didn't like him having some of his facts correct. Since when does a speaker have to have their facts correct before they can speak? Are we going to do a fact check? The mayor didn't think the CRA chairman should be criticized without him being at the meeting. Since when is it okay to criticize a public official because they're not at the meeting? And if that's the requirement, then we need to have public officials at every city council meeting. It should be noted it was okay when another speaker got up and spoke complimentary of the chair, and no one said a word, and he wasn't present when they spoke complimentary. So you can't say anything negative, but you can say something positive. It's interesting to me that we didn't have this kind of concern last year with Councilwoman Mendel when she brought up a subject based on community concerns about sexually oriented shows in Sebring. The mayor severely reprimanded her, and there was numerous comments at the podium at several meetings and shouting from the audience, and shouting words like racist, homophobic, fascist, etc. Mrs. Mendel never complained. In fact, on several occasions, she thanked them for their comments, and even though she disagreed with their point of view. The proposed policy allows the city council president to determine, and you changed the words a little bit from what I read, but if something is personal, abusive, or slanderous. So it's the president, city council president that determines that. every city council president is going to have a different perspective on what those words mean and their point of view. Those are subjective words. I believe the mayor's comments to Councilwoman Mendel and the public was personal and abusive, even though she didn't complain. The president can control disorderly meetings without a policy. This policy is treading on our First Amendment right for free speech. And you talk about efficiency of meetings. Typically, there's only 3 or 4 speakers. They have 3 minutes each. So you're talking about 12 minutes of talking time. I'd recommend that the city council respond to a speaker as appropriate and move on rather than limiting free speech. Thank you.
Good evening. Bobby Lee, also a Sebring resident. I start off with Councilman Carlisle, other council members, Mayor Shoup, Kathy Haley, Mr. Nicolich, Honorable Bob Swain. Good to see you again.
And you, sir.
I kind of looked at this thing this afternoon when I found out what was going on, and I applaud you for your efforts to curb ill behavior. It should be done at every meeting, every time you can. It's definitely not only uncalled for, but you don't have the fortune that I had in the military to just boot somebody out of the meeting without cause, I might add. Other thing in my background that you're not aware of is that for a few years, I represented all of the inmates, over 3,000, at the Kentucky Reformatory in LaGrange, Kentucky. We filed a class action lawsuit against the state for a variety of different issues. It wound up with a consent decree where the state agreed ultimately because we won in the federal court, and they agreed to make major changes. Many of those were First Amendment rights that were being abused by the state of Kentucky. So I do have some background in constitutional law and what First Amendments mean specifically to individuals, even some of the worst people in our country. And there were some really bad folks in Kentucky State Reformatory. But what's important about what you're doing today isn't so much whether it's against free speech or not, but how is it going to impact the city? If someone takes the language that you're using and decides to convert that to a lawsuit, because lawsuits at the federal level, I will guarantee you, are horribly expensive today. They were years ago when I was able to get involved in that. Fortunately, the state had to pay the way after the first go-around or two. You don't want to be the one paying the way. So I caution you to think about the words that are in here. I think that Council Swain has done a very good job. Immediately I would eliminate impertinent because it doesn't fly, I'm afraid, if you look at it closely. That's a minor point. But I simply encourage you to glance at some of the law that's out there. You can say almost anything you want to somebody. And we could even start with a well-known case that I'm sure that Bob Swain learned in law school like everybody else did. It's Cohen versus California. It's the first major First Amendment rights case that all others have followed. So what I'm doing for you, for your benefit, is encourage you to table this until a good opportunity to really have a good thought about whether you want to be sued someday, and ask if you'd pass those cases around. It's just a few cases that give you an example of what is actionable and what is not. And I know that you're already given good legal advice, but there's always another lawyer on the other side.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Reverend George Miller. My address is 310 Matlow Avenue, Sebring, Florida 33870. I have very mixed feelings about this because for me, the First Amendment and freedom of speech is so important. And I would almost rather know what someone thinks than having to assume. What I'm hearing from City Council is a more nuanced discussion. There's a difference between freedom of speech and hate speech. And there's a difference between saying something about someone because of their identity as opposed to addressing someone's behavior. So what I'm hearing is if that someone stood up here and they were using their faith to openly bash someone who was Jewish or Hindu or Muslim, it would be appropriate to ask them to refrain from bashing someone. It would also seem to me that if someone was up here and using their time to bash someone who was black or Hispanic or Asian or white or living with a developmental disability, we would be able to recognize that as hate speech, and it would be appropriate to stop the person from making those comments. Now, behavior is something different. If we observe that someone is acting abusive or someone is saying something that's anti-Semitic or someone saying something that could be seen as homophobic, I believe it's okay to address that and to speak it out loud. So what I'm hearing council discuss is not so much limiting the freedom of speech, but limiting the ability for people to come up here to attack groups of other individuals, especially if it's not addressed to the city business at hand. So an example is, if someone was to correct me because I was one of those people who yelled at the meeting, they are absolutely right because I was 100% disrespectful, and call me on that behavior. But to nullify my identity because I am a gay man, and to do that publicly, would be disrespectful and a form of hate speech. So I think that is what City Council is discussing. So even though I fully support the First Amendment, I fully trust that if someone up here was veering into hate speech, I would trust you to make that distinction and to do what you think is wise. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Because we're not here for someone to get up and bash someone. Bob? Yes, sir. And by the way, you don't have to give your address. We just want to know if you live in the city or not. You know, that's all we're asking.
Fair enough. Robert Cadzo, manager of a restaurant here in town, so I work in the city, though I don't live in the city. I would like to think that all of us that live and work in this city trust the people that we elected to make those choices. Like, yeah, I'm sorry. I think that we should trust you guys to make the choices, and I think this council has elected a president that they trust to make those choices. And if we don't trust you guys, and you guys don't trust Leonard, then vote it down. If you trust yourselves and you trust Leonard, vote for it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Name is Dan Page, business resident of Sebring. I concur with most of what have been said. I think it's going in the same direction. You know, First Amendment is important, but the regulation and the policies and procedures of a meeting are necessary. And sometimes those things that are necessary certainly offends, but they're for a purpose. It's not directed at anyone. So I agree with the attorney that was up here earlier that says, we may want to, curtail or address the wording, but I think if you don't have a policy by which to address or control or regulate the individuals that come up here, the meetings could be a 2-hour meeting, and those are not necessary. So I agree. I think we're all on the same page. We all, our objective is to see the best for the community, to see that Sebring continue to be the great place that it is. And I think if we kind of take some of the personage out of it and just be professional about it, when I come up, I'll state mine, but I'll state it professionally to professional folks. And I think we have to be reminded that the body, the commissioners, or the councilmen rather, and women, they're individuals too. They have feelings as well. And so I think we can get along. I think we can get the business at hand done. I think there should be regulations, but I think we should make sure that our regulation doesn't over-trample the First Amendment. And I think this great body or someone could, draft a policy or procedure to address the concerns that the body have. So I think everybody, we can get along, we can get this done, and I think we should work together.
Appreciate it. Anyone else?
Can I ask a question, Leonard?
Yes, sir.
Bob, this is similar to the resolution that the county has enacted or spoken about enacting. Is that accurate?
I'm not sure if they have a specific resolution that they have adopted. It does follow, my research follows the discussion that the county had where they discussed being able to limit presentations that had abusive comments, had comments that were hate sort of related. When I started to research it again, generally speaking, First Amendment research, the government regulation always loses. That's just almost always the case. And so it was a surprise to find out there was clear legal support for having regulations such as these. And it was crystal clear, only in business meetings, not outside elsewhere in the city. You could not regulate speech in anywhere near like this, outside these walls, outside of the business meeting itself. So it is in line with what I think the county is going to do, but I'm not aware of a specific resolution that they have passed.
Okay. And to my understanding, just for the sake of everyone else so you're informed, the county was talking about this because they had an incident at one of their meetings where a couple individuals came up and verbally attacked actually Reverend Miller. And I think that's the intent of this. I don't think our intent is to silence opposing views. It's to be able to legally shut down when people come in here and say hateful things.
Yes, sir, and I think this is something that ought to be used with a great deal of discretion. That Council President would politely remind somebody that maybe they're getting a little off the topic or a bit personal, and not simply jump to the termination of their ability to talk. That should be used very, very sparingly, only when needed. And I think hopefully one of the court decisions actually said cutting down on the hateful speech might actually encourage folks to get up and speak that might not otherwise, certainly when they might be the subject of an attack like that. So it might actually foster more deliberation and input by having the policy.
Thank you.
And I have one more thing.
Sure.
On the thing of the addresses, I'm very happy to hear you say that wouldn't be required. There was a discussion at county about that. Yeah. And people don't need to give out their address if they're, especially if they could have somebody come against them.
And that's the reason I said
that. So I'm very happy you're doing that.
Thank you. Yes, sir. We already know where you live.
Dan Andrews, 2430 Lakeview Drive, for the record. I think maybe a little clarification may help some of those who bring items from the audience to council. And my understanding is that most of those items cannot be actionable because there's a process to making an item actionable, and that has to be, in my understanding, posted in the agenda. So if a resident or a concerned citizen has an issue or concern that they want to become actionable, isn't there a process that they should go through to do so, rather than bringing things from the audience? I mean, you guys really couldn't and shouldn't respond to action or items coming from the audience. I mean, because then people just show up with shock and awe. You know, they try to catch you out on your words and try to catch you out on what you say or might misstate. And so I think there's probably, and Mr. Swain can address it, there's probably a more appropriate way to handle something that somebody as a citizen wants to be an actionable item.
Certainly the preferred way is to go through Mr. Nadlick. That way those in the city that may have input on it have a chance to consider it and provide that prior to it being presented to council. But some things are certainly appropriate to bring up simply at the meeting, or something that the council may or staff may not be aware of at all. So they can bring it up. But
Yeah. Well, a good example of what we want to happen is exactly what's happening. People coming up and talking to us about business at hand. You know, we want to hear from the citizens, but we want to hear what business at hand. We don't want people to come up and complain about somebody or run them down, or like they did you. We would shut them down. And to me, I think we should have done this a long time ago. And a lot of things that have been said wouldn't have been said. You know, and as a council president, it's kind of a scary situation to know that you can, if somebody gets out of order, say we had enough. You know, but we have to run a orderly business.
And I agree with all of that. We have to have order and laws and rules and regulations. But the two gentlemen that spoke at the last meeting, they were going by all that, and they were shut down just because they had a difference of opinion. And two, I think the language was a little regrettable in that, but to hear problems, they have to be able to bring problems that they see with our city, the different departments or the CRA or us. They have to be able to bring that without fear. And that's what I want to keep open, but I am for rules and regulations.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. One of the gentlemen was up and he was bashing someone. He was literally using somebody's name and called the person a liar. That's not our business. To me, if they're having an issue with someone, they should go to that person. We can't correct that. You know, we can't correct. They need to go to the person. They need to talk to them. They need, you know, if I have a problem with someone, I'm going to go to them. I'm not going to bring it to city council.
Well, with a personal problem, yes, but with the actions
That was
of
a personal
city,
problem.
well, and I agree with you there. We need to steer clear of all the bashing.
Okay.
But we need to be able to address issues with public departments or whatever.
But we don't need to bash people, but that's fine. Okay, anyone else? Any more councilmen? Aye.
I move to approve Resolution 2023-07 as presented, effective immediately.
A second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second.
Can I make a comment? before
Yes,
you vote
sir.
on item 7, it does state that they need to state their names and addresses for the record. In order to
Right.
change
Okay.
that, just state the names and residency for the record.
yes, sir.
Take the address
If you
out.
want, we can do this at the next
Can I
meeting.
amend my
I don't know
motion?
if I'm just splitting hairs or something, but I think that's what the intent
You wanna
is.
make
Yeah,
that part of your
I can
motion?
amend my motion to
Okay,
remove the section requiring addresses.
okay.
Just residency.
Yeah.
That work?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we need a second on that.
And I'll second that as well.
Okay, thank you. Any more discussion? Thank you, Mayor. If not, Do it, Kathy.
Bishop.
Yes.
Avery.
Yes.
Mendel.
No.
Stewart.
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to, 10B, Lake Jackson Cleanup Day, Saturday, August the 12th. I'll ask Mr. Cool to come up and tell us what his plans are.
Carl Cool, resident of the City of Sebring. And I'm here representing
Thank
the
you.
Rotary Club of the City of Sebring. We've had a cleanup of Lake Jackson. This will be our third one. We'd ask the council to approve and be a part of Lake Jackson cleanup, August the 12th, Saturday morning. We start at 8 o'clock. We'll have as many members as we can get of our Rotary Club and of the community. Bring your boat. And one of the important tools to bring is a dipstick that you use to dip the leaves out of your pool. It makes a very good tool to get a Coke bottle or a beer bottle off the lake, off the bottom of the lake, without having to get in the lake. So we last year when we did it, I think we filled up 2 big dumpsters. So we're asking you to have the dumpsters there. Last year, your fire department participated, did a great job. The police department, the sheriff's office participates, and they send their boats and their volunteers to come out, and it just helps Lake Jackson get cleaned up. And so our Rotary Club would like to schedule it, with your permission, for August the 12th, 2023.
Thank you, Carl. Anyone want to discuss?
Well, I just think it's a great idea. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to make a little personal comment here, not bashing one of our people coming up, but I've been waiting 60-plus years to address you, Carl Cool. You used to throw spitballs at the back of my head in Sebring High School auditorium, so I
Okay,
just wanted to mention
we didn't
that.
need that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council member, I am sure, I am positive that you have a mistaken identity. I have never thrown a spitball in Sebring High School at all. I've never thrown it. I don't like them. You're thinking of someone else. I promise you,
Well, maybe
I never did
make a
that.
mistake.
I never did that.
Thank you, Carl.
Okay.
And I'd have to stand up for Carl. I graduated with him, and he was one of the best kids in my class. So,
Thank you very much. We were in a class of 67,
Yeah.
and we were talking about Lake Jackson today and the water quality of Lake Jackson 60 years ago. So,
And what was your thought on that, about the water quality
he
way
is,
back, and is it
he
way
is
back?
actually gonna try to he's gonna get on our agenda, and he's gonna come and report to us and the citizens of what he's finding.
you're going to be happy to hear the information that I have regarding the water quality of Lake Jackson.
Okay.
I'm the lakes. There's a Florida lakes where we take water samples, and I've been doing it for 10 or 12 years for Lake Jackson. And I'll bring you reports so you can see the water quality of Lake Jackson now and how it used to be. But just offhand, I'll tell you, it's better now than it was
Oh, that is
60
so
years ago.
great. So great, thank you.
Thank you.
Carl.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Carl,
it.
you need hot dogs again, or?
Sir?
I said, you need hot dogs again?
Yeah, we'll talk to you about that.
I was gonna ask you, was you gonna have him cook again? If you
I don't
are,
think he
maybe-
cooks. We got a better cook, but he brings them. But we show up at 8 o'clock.
Will you cut that guy off?
But he brings them in, we appreciate it.
Okay.
So
I
we
hope
show
so.
up, it was from 8 till noon on that Saturday morning,
Okay.
and we have a really good time.
Yeah.
And we do a good work to help get the stuff out of Lake Jackson. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone want to discuss this?
Yeah, I just want to mention, the Rotary Club puts it on. It's open to anyone who wants to show up. So if you're looking for something good to do that will help beautify this town, that's a really, really great event.
On August the 12th.
On August the 12th.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the event as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? We won't pick on the mayor no more. Kathy?
Bishop.
Yes.
Avery.
Yes.
Mendel.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes. Okay, we move on to 10C, resolution number 2023-05, And budget amendment number 75, golf course maintenance. And that would be our maintenance man, Mr. Hopkins. He'll come up and tell us, the background is the golf course irrigation system needs to be repaired. There are pressure irregularities that are affecting the system. It has been determined that a variance frequency support or VFD and pressure transducer will fix the problem. The current motor is not able to support a VFD system and will need to be replaced. This was not anticipated, needed in the current year, but has become a necessity to install.
Well, what it is right now the irrigation system, if I wanted to run a sprinkler to water up, let's say a hot spot on a green, I've got to turn 15 heads on. The winter time when we've got a full golf course and I've got heads running every place, people paying $40, $50 for a round of golf aren't real happy. There's a lot of things. Our hands are tied with chemicals and stuff that spraying weeds on greens, doing this, it has to be watered in right away. I've got to turn the whole golf course on just to spray this one green or this one area. Okay. The VFD works the same way. I believe Bob's got them in the water department that where it only pumps enough water for what you need for that sprinkler head, for those two heads, for whatever.
Right.
I don't know this for a fact, but from what I understand, it'll save money down the road because you've got a 100 horsepower pump that's running wide open, pumping 1,200 gallons a minute, or I've got this pump that's coming on, pumping 60 gallons a minute.
Right.
So eventually down the road, we're going to save money. But to be able to do a lot of things that we need to do on the golf course, it's really, just before I got here back 12, 13 years ago, they replaced all the, put in computerized irrigation system. And like I told Scott when I got here, you've got a 2010 irrigation system with a 1950s pump station. It's just, I believe it's time, we need to upgrade.
Right.
And kind of catch up.
Okay. And the budget amendment number 75 is in the amount of $50,247. Transferred funds from fund balance brought forth in general fund to the golf course irrigation account. This will cover the purchase and installation of the equipment. The VFD and pressure reducer is $39,739.42. The new motor is $10,507.20. And if you say that really fast, it don't sound like a whole lot of money, but it is. So, any discussion? Anybody from the audience? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve resolution 2023-05 and budget amendment number 75 as presented.
I second that.
Okay, we got a second. If there's no more discussion, Kathy, call the board, please.
Bishop.
Yes.
Haver.
Yes.
Mendel.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Carl.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along to 10D, Civil Serve Design Group, Inc., Memorial Drive Utility Conflict Support Service, and Budget Amendment number 78. Mr. Bogus, come on.
Seems like the only time I come up here is when I want to spend money.
I know. Well, that's what
Anyway.
makes the world go round.
I suppose. This has to do with a county project. They're wanting to build a multi-use path along the west side of Memorial Drive. It actually begins on Pompano Drive and runs all the way to the Sebring Parkway. They're, like I said, using the west side. And unfortunately for us, our water main is also on that same side of the road. So there are some conflicts that you might expect with such a project. It's our understanding the county is receiving federal grant money that's administered by the Florida Department of Transportation for this project. So it's fully funded by other than county residents. However, ours will be a little different, I'm afraid.
The county's outsourced this project to Civil Serve, and because Civil Serve was already involved in it for the county, I thought it made sense to contact them and have them do our engineering for conflict resolution, which they have. They have attached a work release number 6, which provides the details that they will do for us in the amount of $28,500. That's probably important for council to understand. That's only to identify and engineer the conflicts. If we need them to do anything else, and for example, bid specs or any other engineering that may come up, that will be additional to this work release amount. We also asked them to provide us an opinion of probable construction cost. And this is strictly construction now. It comes in at $242,684, which is a sizable amount to pay just to move your water line. So staff got into discussion with county staff to see what was the best path forward. How can we minimize this burden that the city will obviously have to endure? And county staff has indicated that they would be willing to support an interlocal agreement with the city, which would basically split 50-50 the cost of relocation, just the construction phase of it, nothing more than construction. This is similar to the arrangement that we had with the county for the Sebring Parkway Phase 3, where they asked us to move the gravity line out of where it would have been in the roadway, put it in the median. They agreed to split that. Cost was 50-50. So this would be modeled after that type of arrangement we've already had with them. There's no money in this year's budget for this relocation. Now, I do have money which I was able to move, and budget amendment number 78 is strictly for project accounting purposes. I'm not asking you to do anything that would impact this year's budget. We already have money in engineering. We just simply put it in the project that's been established for this particular job. So there's some attachments in there, but yeah, I'll be happy to answer any questions council may have about this.
So basically, tonight, you're asking us to approve the $28,500.
Yes, sir. That is to get things rolling.
Right.
The
Okay.
county's under a pretty tight timeline with this, with
Okay.
DOTs, I think,
Right.
asking them to move along with it.
Okay, and the 50-50 would be for the construction after this is all done.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I got a little question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just out of curiosity, and that's not got to do with what we need to do today, but what was the material for this path? Do you know?
Scott, do you know? Asphalt.
Okay. Any more questions or discussion?
Some discussion. I mean, I guess I'd like to hear y'all's opinions on this. I'm a little bit feeling negatively about this because the county has a $2 million grant, so they're not paying for any portion except for half of what they're asking us to do. There's only 2 parcels along this route that are actually in the city of Sebring. It's right at the end here in the Parkway. So the estimate right now we have, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Bob, $28,500 just for this engineering portion. They've estimated the cost for construction, probable cost, at $242,000. So we would be on the hook for half of that, $121,000 and change. Plus this engineering, plus potentially more engineering is what you're warning us of as we get into it. All for a project that the county has a grant for in full, that doesn't service residents of the city of Sebring. Is that accurate?
I believe it is.
Okay. I kind of have an issue with that, and I would like to hear the opinions of the rest of council on that. So, I mean, we're basically asking the citizens of the city of Sebring to pay $151,000 for a county multi-use path and to move our water lines that are servicing county residents right now.
That's a good point.
I'm with you, Josh. But I think it is going to have some benefit for city residents too. It's going to be available. I don't like the way that I feel like we're kind of being pushed back into a corner, having to approve it. I think it's going to be ultimately good for Sebring and the county. I think I wouldn't want to see this same situation happen again in the future.
Right, to me, and that's the thing. I think the path is great, awesome, but they got a grant for, 95% of it, and we're on the hook for the 5% kind of deal. And that, those figures aren't accurate, but you get the point of what I'm saying. I really don't like the precedent of us footing the bill for things that are servicing county residents and not city residents.
And I'd like to ask Bob Bogus's opinion on this.
Well, Terry, of course, I don't like having to spend money for this kind of thing anyway, but what council probably should keep in mind that we are using their road right-of-way to have our water line. And that's kind of a risky run. You have an easement, which is the preferable way to go, because you're not gonna have to move anything if you have an easement. But when you're using either state, county road right-of-ways, there's always this problem that could come up. You just never know until it does. So technically, the county could say, we're not gonna help you at all. You gotta move it. So I personally was relieved that they would split it 50-50. Otherwise, we're looking at the whole thing.
Whenever something like this comes up, how frequently do we split it 50-50? Or is it typically all on us?
Typically, it's all on us. But because of the amount of money on this particular one, we thought, hey, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Do we know why they didn't include this cost in their grant application to begin
And we
with?
have someone from the county that make it come up.
I don't think we have anybody
No.
from the county here. But we have Mark, civil service.
Okay,
He's
Mark
probably not
from
gonna know
civil
the,
ser- okay.
I don't know that he'll know the answer to that
That's right.
unless he can take a stab at it. I'm not sure.
Good evening, Mark Frederick with Civil Serve. I'm sorry, the question?
Why we're on the hook for the whole.
Why the county didn't include our 50% in their calculation?
Well, like Bob had mentioned, you guys you have water lines in the right of way, so it's really the kind of the same as communications, electric, any other private utility, so to speak. So typically those relocation costs would be on that private enterprise.
So it's a fair question to wonder why it wasn't put into the proposal.
I think there's a better question. Was DOT, the $2 million for the project that DOT did, how come the potential utility complex wasn't in that initial grant application? And I don't know whether or not that was a grant application for the entire project or just they're receiving $2 million towards it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of predating my involvement on the project. We weren't involved with getting the grant funding and setting those original budgets or any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I guess I would say it's just, yeah, it'd probably be best to ask the county. It wouldn't be typical that those costs would be included for utility relocations in that kind of project.
This is my second meeting, guys, so I'm looking for some input from more senior council members.
Well, I think it's great that you brought that up and that we can, kind of look at that and see and then get Mr. August's opinion about how it has to go. Yeah. So
Well-
it sounds like we're very blessed to have a 50-50 split here because they can just say it's all on us and there's nothing the city can do about it.
Other than just not do it.
I guess council could lobby the county commissioner, say, we don't think the project's a good idea, or I don't know. But as far as the utility standpoint goes, I think I'm caught between a rock and a hard place.
Where would you move all that stuff to?
Well, I think we're probably gonna have to go deeper than we are now. And most of the conflicts, and please correct me if I'm mistaking something here, but most of the conflicts, as I understand it, has to do with the storm water drainage that's part of this project as well. If it were just the path itself, I don't think we would have a whole lot that would be in conflict, but because they have to put infrastructure in that's underground, that's where the rub comes in with us.
So basically, we're blessed to get 50% of it.
I think so. I wish it were more, but, it's 50%, so that helps some. I could think of better ways to spend that money, but You know,
So
it is,
wait.
it is what it is.
If I could, I just wanted to mention too, the numbers that we had in the preliminary cost estimate. I mean, that still is preliminary, so, you know, obviously we're working on the design for the county, and we'd be doing the utility relocation, so we want to, you know, kind of streamline that process and take those opportunities to minimize anything. And we'll be in touch with Bob. You know, there might be some things that are kind of questionable, like, hey, this doesn't meet the city's code, you know, or standards, but are you okay with it in this situation, to kind of cut costs?
And this is basically not a firm number, this 242,000 is not a firm number.
Correct, yeah, we haven't completed the design. That's what this approval would be for, the $28,000 number.
So I guess I do have one more follow-up question. I don't know if this is you, Bob, or Scott. So what prevents county from doing other projects? Is this going to happen once a year, every couple of years? What does that look like as we grow and develop?
It hasn't happened a lot in the past. We're seeing more of it now that as the county's growing. We have another conflict out on Hammock Road where they're putting in some additional stormwater drainage stuff, and it conflicts with a force main that we have in there. Fortunately, that's not a huge thing for us, and we're doing that with in-house staff. But something of this complexity that we're talking about on Memorial Drive, it exceeds our in-house capabilities, and that's why we're going to have to outsource it.
How long of a stretch is that mile-wise? Do you have an idea?
Terry, I'm not
Just-
sure, but
just a little
it's
ballpark?
I'm sure it's what, more than a
The front half for the project, yeah.
yeah. It's a distance.
Okay. Any more questions or concerns? Tonight, we're just approving the 28,500, so.
Well, but in effect, we're kind of choosing to do it or not, right?
Well, I don't, Josh, I don't think we really have a choice of whether we don't do it. You know, because they want us to move our line.
Is there any pressure we can put on the county to prevent, as Harrison was saying, this from just being their normal standard operating procedures?
That would be, staff's answer, could answer that.
Well, I mean, I think we can have conversation about in the future when they go to do projects as such, if they're receiving
Put it in the
funding
grant.
for, that, you know, they keep in mind that there may be some utility relocates and they should, you know, request dollars for those utility relocates, or at least involve us in the process so that we can make the request, right?
Right. Okay.
Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this was a project that's been on the books for the county for a number of years and goes back before the current engineer, J.D. Langford, or Gator Howerton was even part of the county. It goes back to Ramon's days, as I understand it. So probably wasn't much thought given, but I agree with Scott. We always like to feel like we're partners and work together on a lot of things, and perhaps in the future as we move forward, especially these expensive projects, that we can become more of a partner, for lack of a better way to put it, and see if we can't hammer out some of this stuff before we get to the spot we're in right now.
Okay. Sounds good. Yes, sir.
Dan Page, business resident. My question would be, if we don't have an easement now, you know, what prevents us when we remove it this term from having to move it again? Are we interested in considering, one, an easement for this in the future? The other concern I have is, and I know that grants, all that you don't spend, you send back, right? So generally, you know, the city or the county makes certain it's spent, so they don't have to send it back. But what happens if they send back, as an example, $200,000? We've chipped in 50%. I think, you know, there should be some more information to make an intelligent decision, or a decision rather, to say whether or not to split it. Because there's no way, we're assuming and I get that impression that we're assuming because of the question that was asked as to whether or not it was included in the grant by the county. And I think the county is saying, hey, move it and we'll share it with you, but it could have been calculated in. And again, my concern is we pay that half, that $130,000, $40,000, $50,000, and then learn that, hey, it all wasn't spent and any of it went back. And then, you know, we don't have eggs on our face, but we could have spent that $150,000 certainly on something else. So my concern is future easements, because that prevents us from being at this point. My other concern is, you know, who gets to ask the county, did y'all include it in your projections when you sent off for the grant? That's all.
Okay. Anyone else?
So to clarify, we're voting on the 28,500 tonight. There would be a second vote once we get to the construction phase to allocate that budget, correct?
There would also be an additional vote on the end of the agreement with the county for cost sharing.
Okay, thank you.
Scott, do you see any problem if we go back to the county and not ask for more, but kind of ask for more? Or is there a chance that they just say, well, we're not gonna fund 50%?
They're having heartburn about funding 50%.
That's fair.
So are we. Always ask.
So, and maybe this is maybe something we need to analyze and look at other counties and cities. Maybe Bob can have input on this, but in their land development regulations, it basically says that if there are utilities in their right of way, you got to move them if they do a project. That may be commonplace throughout the state.
And it applies to all the utilities that may be in there. And there could be lots of them.
Not just, not necessarily just us. It could be Duke, it could be, you know, Comcast.
Well, there's also a privately owned force main that's in a section of this conflict area. They too are going to have to deal with this problem as we are.
But I think it's fair to say that the county often forgets that we're all county residents.
Good.
I need a motion.
I move to accept civil serve work release number 6.
A second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Kathy, call the board, please.
Bishop,
Yes.
Haver,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Business from the audience. Mr. Lee.
Left.
He
He's
left.
spoken and left.
Okay, well, he done his part. Mr. Dean? He didn't give me a topic, so I don't know what he's gonna talk about.
I'm James Dean of Sebring. Last meeting, City Council became upset with me. Someone accused me of lying. I do not lie. I document my sources. From now on, I will give my sources first, give my analysis second. I will now repeat 2 of my sources that seem to have been missed. First was an article by Alice Stropel, a longtime member of Highlands Art League, in Highlands News Sun, November 2nd, 2021, page 6, review points. This, by the way, I am not and was not attacking Scott Nothwitz. I've always liked him for a long time, but this could be an attack on city policy. Mrs. Stropel stated that the Arts League saved the Magnolia House, Weigel House, and Clovelly House from destruction 15 years earlier and had been originally given a 10-year lease. When COVID curtailed their activities, she said the city canceled the 10-year lease to a 1-year lease and at that time, Sebring Historical Society took over Weigel and Clovelly House. Arts League kept the Magnolia House, all with year-to-year leases. Mrs. Stropel stated that Scott Nothwitz, city administrator, called the Art League to advise them that a man called the Outfitter was touring the Arts League building as a bidder before he could rent or buy. She stated, After months of believing the Visual Arts Center might simply be demolished with no compensation, there is possibility now that it is okay for it to stay and a for-profit business could simply take it out from under the Arts League. She continued, "This insensitive, insulting, dismissing, and infuriating action by the city of Sebring is beyond anything I could have imagined. The Sebring City Council has signed a death warrant for the Highland Arts League." End of quote. I did not make this up or make idle accusation, but will add my analysis. This shows that City of Sebring showed intent to destroy art, culture, and history in nonprofit organizations on the Sebring waterfront. A city official announced the plan to hand an art and cultural center over to a private developer. My second quote, missed by City Council, was from News Sun 12/26/21. David Lydell stated that with CRA, you think differently how you invest. Spending $200,000 in demolishing a building sounds like a lot, but they will get in return an $8 to $10 million project. Sebring did not get an $8 to $10 million project. They got a gaping hole in the downtown historic district. Had the $200,000 or possibly more been spent to re-roof and stabilize the Nanseswi Hotel built by
You
George
have
Sebring.
20 seconds.
What?
You have 20 seconds.
Okay, I'll stop.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, city attorney's business?
Nothing further, sir.
Thank you. City administrator, 13A.
Good evening, council. Before you is a proposal from Civil Serve to conduct a analysis of the drainage improvements for the City Pier Beach waterfront. And particularly, we've got two retention areas down there, as you all may be aware. One of them behind the Jack Stroop Civic Center, which services, I would say, essentially all of downtown, at least from the circle going west, if you will, right? So all of the water that drains on the western side there, and Civil Service had identified, I'm going to say, an acreage for that, but that water heads straight down to the lake and ultimately ends up in that particular retention area. That retention area I've seen on many occasions overflowing. When I say overflowing, it's not overflowing just into the lake through the structure that was prepared for it, but it's overflowing the banks and actually overflowing the sidewalk into the lake. When we were looking at the waterfront from the perspective of the city and the CRA, we had discussion about, is there anything that we could do to make the waterfront more usable, eliminating these retention areas and doing, putting in some stormwater infrastructure that would treat the water before it got to the lake, was something that was suggested. So we went to Civil Serve to have them give us an idea of what they could do, and then give us a submittal for an analysis of ultimately what could be done to eliminate those retention areas. And there are various ways that could be done. Mark's here; he could probably give you some thoughts as to what could be done. But we want to free up some of that property, if you will, for a better use, if you will.
Well, we took care of some of that with that drainage off of Franklin.
We did, but there's still,
there's
we're
still a
still
bunch of
having,
water.
and we're still having issues with, I'm going to say drainage as it heads towards City Pier, if you will, and then we're still having some drainage issues even after making those improvements.
But we have
But this
improved it a little bit.
this would be a much more comprehensive look. They'll take into account those drainage improvements we made, and then maybe suggest some additional drainage improvements for the area, so that ultimately we can make the city waterfront, I'm going to say, more usable for the public. Because right now, You don't want to utilize it in the summer because there's water in it, obviously, and typically people don't want to utilize it in the winter just because, you know, it's a retention area. People
That's a
don't-
big hole.
It's a big hole, right?
And through this, potentially we can clean the water better.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Sure, yeah, I think Scott gave a good overview. Just a couple of things similar to the Franklin Street project there. I think one of the things we'd be looking for are opportunities like kind of upstream in the basin. We're not just looking at the waterfront parcel or property itself. As Scott mentioned, it's a pretty large area. I think it's about 110, 111 acres is kind of what we estimated for kind of that wedge, kind of bounded by Sebring Parkway, and then I think Spruce Street on the north side there, and then over to the lake. So, so part of this proposal includes some stormwater inventory data collection of what you currently have, looking at options of, you know, are those close to city properties where we can reroute some flows and get some treatment and hold it and retain it upstream in the basin, so we don't have as much water getting down to the lake, the waterfront property. With the ponds that are currently there, we wouldn't necessarily be able to eliminate them entirely, just because we have, well, there's Swift Mud permits for them, so if they exist, we'd have to look at a strategy that would be something like compensating treatment volume. You know, if that volume went away, we can treat untreated water somewhere else, you know, so we're, you know, moving that benefit. But I think ultimately what we would want to be working with the city to come up with is a solution that kind of reroutes drainage across that site and just has better use of the property. You know, we'd be looking at stormwater vaults under pavement as a potential option. So you still have usable, you know, parking above it and that sort of thing, just so, you know, have as much space dedicated to the stormwater ponds in kind of the prime area of the property right at the waterfront.
And that's pretty much what we did in the parking lot. We put underneath, we put drain to catch the water and kind of let it seep out, kind of like a drain field.
Exactly. Yep.
So it sounded like we'll never be able to totally do away with the retention ponds there on the property, but you could make it less by either stopping it upstream, so to speak, or having it spread out and dissipate upstream? Or is there a way to actually totally do away with it or reroute it where something could be done in the current retention pond area?
Right. Yeah. At a minimum, there's a permitted, you know, volume benefit of those ponds right now. So you can't just take it away without providing that somewhere else. So if you could move that treatment somewhere else in the basin, and you're still providing treatment somewhere else, then you can, you know, that opens up some options of what you can do with the area that the pond's currently set.
Is there currently treatment of water and all in that area before it goes into the lake?
Yeah, that's the two ponds that we were talking about that have Swift Mud permits on them.
So what does that mean so far as treating the water?
Well, it's
goes
supposed
down
to
through the
seep
soil.
down.
Goes down through the
soil, that's
But,
the treatment.
but the problem is, like Scott was saying, there's times when we get all this rain, it doesn't seep down, it runs over.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things
That's
we're
what you're
trying
trying to do.
Yeah. It's called growth.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
And I don't know if I mentioned it, but the cost for them to do that analysis is $109,700. The CRA at their April 10th meeting passed a motion to reimburse the city that $109,700 for the drainage improvement analysis of the waterfront area if the city proceeds through with the undertaking of the drainage improvements themselves.
Tom Mendel, Sebring. So in the original CRA waterfront project, they had money in there to do this work on the basins, as I recall. and it was a pretty substantial amount of money. Now, that project was, you approved phase one at $6 million, thereabouts, maybe it's 6.1, 6.3, somewhere in there. So, but we haven't heard what the new plans are by the CRA for the waterfront project. So how are, seems to me like they ought to be picking up the costs for this rather than doing it out of the city. And again, we don't know what the new plans are, and they call it phase one is what I've seen their language. The $6 million is just approved for phase one. So we don't know what the total cost of this project's gonna be, or how many phases or anything. I'm just wondering, why wouldn't some of this money be covered in that?
That waterfront project, the $6 million is no longer pointed that. They gave us a list of things to do downtown in the historical part. They're not going to go phase one at all.
I just, in the CRA, they have phase one is in their current plan, their current budget, and they're planning on moving forward with it. And they've never presented, because, and the reason is because I brought this up to the council, that you had approved $6 million, and I felt like you should rescind it because the waterfront project was canceled. But you never did, it was asked of Mr. Lydell if he still has that money to spend, and I understood the answer to be yes.
We approved the $6 million, but it wasn't for the waterfront.
No. There's two different $6 million. I agree. The $6 million you're talking about was for their budget for this year, but or the loan that they took, the $6 million loan that they took. But this is another $6 million, and it was for the waterfront project. Mr. Lydell here?
Yes.
Am I incorrect on this? Could you explain it then, how it is? Oh, okay. So wait, do you have a phase one planned in your plan?
Is it okay? His attorney told me about that.
doesn't have to.
No, we
I
didn't.
think, Tom,
Okay.
what has happened through this whole, whatever's happened, is that you're right, there is a $6 million phase one, and there was a $6 million loan.
Right.
It's two separate issues, you're
Yes,
correct
yes,
on
sir.
that. The discussions have continued on between CRA and the city, that what are we gonna do? We can't spend 20 million down there. There's no
Right.
way,
Right.
for that, unless we get something falls from heaven on us and helps us out.
Right.
But this is, what has evolved is that we have a drainage problem in the city itself.
Mhm.
Lakeview Drive, just if you go through there when it rains, cars are hydroplaning through that thing because the puddle's deep. So the issue is to look at correcting this, and what the CRA has, part of it was drainage issues. And what the CRA, the way they approved this payment is, if the city allows everybody to go through with the waterfront plan, that's what they'll reimburse. If the waterfront plan doesn't go in, it's all on the city to fix their own drainage. So that's kind of the discussion that's been had, so.
Okay.
And that's where their motion was, is to say, if the city does allow everybody to go through, then they will reimburse the city for that cost. If not, then the city's gotta pay for it. So instead of just taking CRA money and then saying, okay, we're not doing anything with
Sure.
it, so that's where this reimbursement comes in, but.
Okay, but that's just for the 109,000.
Correct.
But what about the cost of the project itself?
I think that's where we're gonna find out what we can do.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know, if we can do anything.
Fair enough.
Then we move forward, and then there's more talk with the CRA again to say, okay, let's, I think this plan is scaled down, and what, the envisioning of everybody is that where those ponds are, it'd be nice to turn that into nice green space.
Sure. Sure.
And then that'll give kind of phase one of phase one at that point in time. So
Okay.
it's moving forward slowly.
Okay.
It hasn't died totally.
Right.
But I think CRA understands and the city understands that we're not gonna go out there and dump a bunch of money into it and not really know where we're going. And this
Okay.
would be the first kind of the project guideline to say, okay, even though it's not saying we're gonna do this, this, and this, I think it's first to say, if this is gonna be a $5 million project just to solve the drainage.
Right.
Then we got other issues.
Right, right.
So that's kind of where we're.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Trying to be
Thank you.
smarter and coming out with a $20 million plan and.
Absolutely,
and, a
absolutely.
bulldozer, so.
Sure, sure. Okay, thank you very much.
You get your answer?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for coming up. Any more discussion?
Yeah, I got just one more question. So really, we need that analysis of the drainage improvements, no matter what happens with the.
Absolutely.
This
Right.
needs to be, you got cars hydroplaning out there, that's
Right.
not good.
It's hazardous down there.
Yeah.
It is. It's, we improved some of it.
Very
By the
little.
Franklin, but we didn't improve, I guess, a lot. We did some. So this is to try to continue to correct the problem. And we need an engineer to tell us how to do it.
Well, you've gotta do an analysis,
All
has to
right,
be done.
that's what they're for. So, anyone else?
No.
Well, I want to make a motion.
I move to approve work release number 6 between the City of Sebring and Civil Serve Design Group and instruct the city attorney to draft a contract with Civil Serve for council president's signature.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Kathy?
Bishop,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes. Okay, last but certainly not least, our city clerk needs somebody to,
We need to pay the bills.
or we don't have to.
So
Oh,
moved.
yeah, we do.
We have a motion.
You, okay.
I second it.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Anybody would like to discuss paying our bills? I hate to do that. Every month I have to write checks. but
Exactly.
If you don't, people cut you off, so go ahead, Kathy.
Bishop,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes. Okey dokey, that's it. And thank everyone for coming out and your discussions with us. We want good discussions. We want people to come up. We just don't need to.
There's nothing to stop here. Check if the device is on your home Wi-Fi network.
Hello. Anyway, thanks for coming
What was
and
he
having.
watching?
Huh?
What was he watching?
Some movie.